What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's TV review of the Afterparty Season 2, Episode 2, Grace. This episode is directed by Valia. Okay, so like I said in my first episode review, this season has turned out pretty good so far. First episode was great. This episode might just be better, to be fairly honest, but it's kind of like apples and oranges, to be fairly honest. It's just, there's so much good stuff in these first two episodes. I even watched the next, 8 episodes, and I find like this series is going to be fantastic. But once again, the first episode is basically the setup. It's basically what we need to know about these characters for the most part to get our kind of wet whistled or whatever you want to call it. And, to basically bring us into this world that is the Afterparty Season 2, which is bringing 3 characters back from the first season, which, like I said, is Zoe Chao, Sam Richardson, and Tiffany Haddish, but introducing us to these new characters, which are going to, for the most part, get their own episode per this season to allow us to kind of complement and comprehend who these individuals are and kind of the world they live in. But once again, like those other episodes from the first season, each of these episodes that we're going to watch from here on out are going to have a distinct genre to it. They're going to have a distinct flavor. They're going to have the story progress forward, but they're going to give us a view of the individuals from a very distinct point of view, and that's what the Afterparty does at this point. And this episode is no different, and I found this episode great. Poppy Leo, who plays Grace, who is the wife of Edgar, who's killed, is fantastic. I love her. I think she's absolutely riveting to watch. She's hilarious. I love her sensibility, her sentimentality. She's the first brought in to be interviewed by, of course, Anik and Danner, who was, of course, the one interviewing as the last season did. And like a lot of these characters, we'll get different genres and different feels to who they are. And Grace's character, she and her explanation of what she did leading up to the murder of Zach Wood's character is told through a Jane Austen style storytelling aspect, which Jane Austen did like Pride and Prejudice, that 1800s romanticized view where everybody's in corsets, there's a love interest and another love interest, and there's a conflict, and it's beautifully set. It's like very hazy and foggy, and kind of like it almost looks like it almost feels like there's a filter put over the whole entire thing, and there's a lot of like candlelight and stuff like that. And it basically also adds in today's technology and stuff like that in a lot of respects. But basically what this episode does is it gives us what exactly Grace's story is. And what Grace's story is she's an individual that ran a shop of some sort within another shop of this building, which is really funny in its own right. She comes across, this is a thing that made me laugh for like 3 minutes, but she comes across this character named Edgar, who's the one who's the main person that gets killed, and he has the lizard on his shoulder. He has a lizard on his shoulder because the lizard's like his companion, and it causes when they two meet, because we find out that they met like 6 months ago, so on and so forth. I love the moment where Zoe brings in like a jacket for Grace, because they have not got along with each other. We'll find out a little bit more why, but Grace and Zoe have had a little bit of falling out. But she comes in to listen to Grace speak, which is really funny because it's how it plays out. But going back to Grace's story, they meet at this market. They're both Edgar's in like that very, the way costuming works for the 1800s when it comes to men, and like the jacket and the proper tie and stuff like that. And another thing that happens is, she's in a corset. But the funniest part, the thing that made me laugh, and I don't know why this made me laugh for so long, is when she sees the lizard, she sees him, they both start yelling, like not yelling, but they let out a scream. Now, the scream would just be a scream, but because of how Zach Wood screams and how Grace screams, or Zach Wood and Poppy Leo scream, it's like the most awkward scream. And Zach Woods is so awkward to begin with when like he presents himself, that it's so funny to watch. It's hilarious. It's just like the most random scream. She says that it's a lizard, but it's just it kind of comes out of nowhere. But it's also like one of those things where the whole entire theater laughed into like laughter of like insane amount of proportions, because it's so funny. And I just love that about this whole situation, because this romantic relationship is so awkward and weird. It comes out of like, it's one of those things that moves really quickly. And I kind of love that, because what ends up happening is she just tells a story about, he invites her to this party so that he can get to know her a little bit better. And we go, and it's like, once again, it's like an 18th century party. There's like, violinists and like guitarists and stuff like that. But what's also great is like he gives her a credit card when they're at the shop, and he has like his watch on, and he has a cell phone, but it plays out like it's an 18th century Jane Austen novel. And it's like that, keeping us in that world, but also making us realize that it's actually set in like the back and forth, and how the director and the creators have kind of positioned this world to look like 1800s, but also look like, feel like, modern day, is absolutely fantastic. But they go to this party, and like, Isabella, the Elizabeth Perkins character, is very, very mean once again. She kind of mistreats, Grace by calling her Gail. And, Edgar kind of puts her in her place. And then Hannah, the stepsister, comes back into the mix. And they start to develop a relationship, Grace and Hannah, that becomes like a sisterly bond. And like it's kind of representative of like, Hannah feels like she's never had a friend, never had somebody to be close to. So there's a relationship there. And it leads to, of course, Edgar and, of course, Grace going out and kind of having their moment together. They feel like there's a bond together. And it basically opens up to, he asked her to marry her and stuff like that. And it's really interesting to have this play out like this, because what ends up happening is Grace says sure, she goes for it. Edgar feels like they can bring out a new thing to side to him, because he's a very awkward person. It's very touching, but it adds in that very humoristic approach to what Zach Woods does. So there's a very odd, very kind of weird sensibility to the whole thing. And then on top of everything, you think Grace would be smarter enough to know that there's something really off about him, but she kind of feels for him and stuff like that. It leads to like a bachelorette party, which leads to Zoe asking Grace, like, is this right for you? Is this the thing you want to do? I found that very funny, very unique. I find that kind of, it's an interesting approach, because it makes you realize that Grace maybe going for the wrong thing, maybe going for the wrong approach, maybe this isn't the right situation, because the awkward nature of Zach Woods' character of Edgar, and this goes back to the current time where you realize Grace and Zoe, they're kind of falling out, was because of Zoe's worry that Grace was just jumping into this like deep into the ocean, and then she wasn't thinking it through. And I think that's a really kind of clever trick, because it shows you that there's something more there that is maybe a little problematic in situation. So do you find yourself out there in the world trying to find a book to read? Everything is not speaking to you. You want to find something a little more over the top and crazy and silly, unlike the typical tropey books that are out today. Well, personally, I found a book just for you. This book, which is called J.R. Castillo Comes Home, which is written by Johnny A. Mann, is a story of a writer from that comes back to his hometown. He's a noir writer, and he tries to get back with his high school crush, as well as dealing with a serial killer in his hometown. And as you expect, if you read Johnny A. Mann's material before, it's over the top, it's silly, it's graphic, and it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of heart and inventiveness put into it. But it's also a book that, is unique for its own right, and it's a book that I definitely recommend. If you read anything else that he's written, it's something that you might find fun, you might find entertaining, and I highly recommend it. So, definitely check it out. It's currently on Barnes & Noble's online retail store. But once again, that is J.R. Castillo Comes Home, which is written once again by Johnny A. Mann. And it's a book that I highly recommend. So definitely check it out, and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys. But the also telling thing that also makes Zoe correct is the fact that Edgar, his view and his cryptocurrency stuff, and the fact that he has this idea of like he wants to live for 140 years so he can upload himself into the cloud, which is very much a San Junipero thing from, of course, Black Mirror. There's tell signs there that this might not be a good relationship, but Grace's character is really kind of behind it. It's just a really sad state of affairs. But once again, it's really funny. There's a whole sequence where Isabella meets Fang and meets Vivian's character, and there's a point where King John's character eats a bunch of potpourri. And, it just brings out some weird kind of, situational stuff. And it makes you realize that there's something really off about this world and about this family and about this unique ability for Edgar and Grace to be a couple. And there's something pulling them apart, but they're trying to be together. It basically makes Danner tell Zoe she needs to leave because she's too close to the situation, which will cause a lot of problems. At that point, Zoe and Travis basically get into the mix of the whole situation, and they are trying to figure out on the phone, and maybe when, of course, Edgar died, and it becomes a whole big thing where they mess with the body, which is very much like Weekend at Bernie's, which is funny. I actually give a lot of credit to Zach Woods, who has to play dead for most of this series, which is pretty funny. I love that with like the flashbacks and stuff like that. We kind of learn a little bit about who Edgar is, but Edgar's into biohacking. He's into the idea of like wanting to live forever through the idea of the cloud and the computers. But the really telling sign of how bad this relationship gets and how almost like kind of sad Grace's character can be, Edgar and Grace don't see each other till the wedding. They're getting married and they have not seen each other till the wedding. Like that's like 6 months. So there's like a 6 month period where she doesn't see Edgar. Like, how is that even possible? Most relationships, you see each other up until the wedding day where you don't see each other because there's a whole big fear and, the whole big superstition and stuff like that. And then on top of everything, Edgar wants her to sign a prenup, which, causes a lot of angst. She's like, it's not very romantic, but he wants to sign a prenup and blah, blah, blah. Gets to the point where she can I do it Monday, which could lead to super like ideas and conflict about, why would she want to wait till Monday to sign it? But he agrees to it. And then, you get to the wedding part and you find out, like, for instance, the character of Isabella gives her like this family heirloom, this thing to put in her hair, which disappears. I don't know if that's going to be brought up, but she's put it in her hair. And then when they get to go get married, the thing has disappeared out of her hair. So like, what's going on with that? So maybe that's something to think about. And then on top of everything, the vow box, the reason the vow box is used is for Edgar to feel much more comfortable. But there's something kind of awe-inspiring about how Edgar basically tells her, you make me want to be a better man. It's kind of like as good as it gets. And I think that's kind of interesting because she's like, don't read the paper, read from your heart. What do you want out of this relationship and this marriage? And he tells her, I want to be able to change. And I feel like you can change me. And that's very sweet, but it's like, you got to wonder, what is this relationship leading to? Of course, it's going to be leading to. But what is this relationship going to be? He's always worried about cryptocurrency. He's always worried about, extending his life. For instance, he gets like, she asks him to go on a dance floor. He says, okay, I'll do it. But then he disappears. He, of course, goes off to do his biohacking thing. And on top of that, he spent all those weeks and months looking for the Konkle, the Ulysses character played by Chao, who has some really great moments. Like, I love him when he comes out of the bathroom in the shower, where, of course, Anik and Zoe are staying. And then, he's brought in and he's offering like that fermented bowl stuff. And then, he comes in and saves the day, to dance with her. It's a lot of stuff that's leading to the problematics of Edgar's character, not on a scripting level, just the nature of how awkward he is and how he's affecting every single person around him. It's similar to Dave Franco's character in the first season, where each individual person that is related or knows him could be the killer because of some situation. There's a situation with Hannah and Grace where it almost feels like, when we see Hannah's character and her own story, maybe she likes Grace. Maybe there's something there. It leads into possibilities of her possibly being the killer because fond of Grace in that way. It leads into Travis, who has come to the party. We find out that she's the ex of Grace. There could be something there because we find out at the end of the episode that Travis has been kind of spying on Edgar. It could be Isabella with the hair pick thing that as a family heirloom. Jack Whitehall, Sebastian character, who has very much a personal connection to Edgar. It's all these moving pieces, all these moving parts that start to make you wonder what exactly is the conspiracy here, what exactly it is. And it has to do with the cryptocurrency because it's very much in play in the first episode where there's questions about like, what is this stuff that's in there? It's just shown very briefly, but like, for instance, Anik gets a good point of view of it. The Edgar character trusts Anik to have the lizard and he loses it, but finds its way back onto Edgar's character. I mean, there could be a possibility at this point where Edgar might not actually be dead. Like, he may be plotting with Grace, as we find out later on. Grace wanted to elope, wanted to go off, but you know, it's a really kind of a lot of moving pieces, a lot of set parts. And that once again, it reveals a little bit more, but doesn't give us the whole narrative because it's 10 episodes. But I find that interesting because, once again, she used the Adderall because she wanted him to stay awake, to be with her, to you know, because the marriage is going downhill so quickly. Like, you know, he gets really drunk. He starts calling people the devil. If it sounds like he's drank more than he's supposed to, like, who gave him more alcohol. And then it leads her to go up, and she's like, you didn't carry me across the threshold, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, the kind of the speech that Isabella gives, which is really funny in the first episode. And it just, a lot of the stuff you start questioning, like, like, I took a lot of notes on, like, you know, why is this happening the way it's happening? What are these characters and their kind of feeling? Because you're not given a lot of information. You know, for instance, Zoe and Travis find like his cell phone, which is of course an Apple phone, the watch. They can measure the heartbeats of when he died. You know, they find a prescription for Adderall. What does that mean? They find something else, a cufflink for somebody. Could it be Jack Whitehall's Sebastian character? Could it be like the Fang character? There's a lot of things that are put out there as moving chessboard pieces that give you just enough information to go, okay, what are the plans and what is the perspectives of what each individual could do as the plot for them being the murderer. And once again, that's perfectly well represented. The ideas of like the clue pieces and how they are expertly placed just enough for you could think it could be Hannah, or you could think it could be all these other characters. And at this point, it feels like it could be Hannah. And then they try to do the whole thing where they do the cliffhanger, where, as they always do in the series, where they do a thing that happens where Travis has this folder and it spills out and it's all these pictures of Edgar and like the different things about Edgar. And, you know, it's why Travis is going to be the next episode, because he's the next suspect. So we'll learn a little bit. I don't know exactly what the story is going to be, but he comes off as that guy who thinks he's a detective, but he comes off more as a, you know, big puss more than he's a detective, because when they see the body, he freaks out, which is kind of funny. But I mean, at this point, Grace could be the suspect, could be the killer, but like I said, she has a pretty good alibi and she's kind of let go, and they kind of feel like she's not the suspect because she has a pretty cut and dry case for why she couldn't be the suspect. But once again, so did Ben Schwartz's character, and we saw what happened there. So it could be any manner of things. We'll find out as the season goes along. But like I said, I love what this episode does. I think it's very fun. I think the aesthetic of doing the Jane Austen style is a lot of fun and unique and entertaining. I love that, you know, it just plays out in a modern sense, but it's also very 1800 sense. And I love that they gave Poppy Leo to a chance to like shine in this episode, because once again, it'll go on to another character in the next episode, which will kind of put this character behind for a little bit and allow the next character, which is Paul Walter Hauser, do his thing, which, you know, he's very of a different type when it comes to his comedic abilities. So, but with that said, that is going to be my take on this episode. I'm giving it a 9.5 out of 10. Once again, it's a fantastic episode, funny as all can be. I laughed, like I said, for like 3 minutes on that one joke, which is, you know, not really like the greatest joke in the world, but I just found it very funny for some reason. But this is so good so far. It really is. This might be better than the first season. Like I said, it might be better than the first season, but we'll see how it plays out. But with that said, yeah, that's going to do it. That's going to be my take on the Afterparty Season 2, Episode 2, which is called Grace. Well directed, well written, and greatly acted. So there you go. Comments below. Once again, who do you think is the killer? Do you think it's Hannah? Do you think it's any of these characters? Do you think it could be a setup for Grace and Edgar to be eloping? Like, I don't know. Tell me what you think about like the pieces you've seen. With that said, that'll do it. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see on the channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell. Top the fun's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.